Hi everyone, my name is Greg Wood. I'm one of the co-founders of Archivist. We just released this cool feature called Data Studio. It's really a way to map the entity relationships within your campaign. I spend a few minutes here just to get you oriented on this. There's a lot of filters and knobs and pulls to go through, but hopefully this video will be helpful. So let's dive on in. First up, we're in the playground view. There are a lot of things going on here. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see these electrons kind of moving back and forth between a bunch of nodes. You can also see some static elements out in the back. The first thing I'm going to do, because Playground is letting all of your data flow through, is just remove untagged nodes. It really just cleans up the view. And so here you can see all these connections between sources of tags and the targets of them as well. So in this case, if I zoom in on, say, this William character, the source are these gray dots. This gray dot in particular happens to be a step as part of the timeline feature. That is the source of a tag that is tagging William, who is the target or the object of that. So William was in this step, and you can see how many other steps or elements were tagging into William. On the outside here, if you scroll into the middle, there's a lot more tags going on, a higher density of them. You'll see your players, your PCs in your story are common characters who have been referenced a lot, or entities that have been referenced, like your common locations will be included quite a bit as well. This is ran on a physics engine, and so it's kind of fun to click around and play through it. With larger campaigns, this can also be a little bit of a mess to go through, but it certainly is visually interesting at least. But because of that, because it can be kind of a lot to absorb and go through, although I encourage you all just to get in here and play with it, that's why we aptly called it the playground. We did set up some presets for you to sort of explore your world in some ways that we thought would be especially helpful. So I already mentioned one of the filtering options up here, the tags and polls. All of these checkboxes in radio graphs and group buttons and all that, they change or do something to the graph. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's just too much. So let's talk through the presets and then we can go from there. So first off, let's do top entities. So what this is doing is looking at or filtering down the entities that can be the targets of your world by the most frequent occurrence of being tagged. The highest tag entity is on the right, and it goes back down to the left in lower volumes. In this case, we're looking at only PCs, just 3 factions, 5 locations, and that's visually seen up here, PCs, top 3, top 5, and they're all orderly ranked. If you wanted to look at them a little bit more relative sizing, you just hit that button that'll show relatively along the x-axis farther out to the right is going to be the most tagged entities, while the left side is going to be the entities with fewer tags. You can play with any of these, like I had mentioned. It's kind of a fun way just to visually see what are the most tagged entities. And again, you can see these electrons kind of zipping back and forth from these sources to the targets. Um, let's see. If you want to really deep dive on a particular entity, you just go to Entity Deep Dive. By default, we're gonna serve up the entity that has the most tags in your campaign. But you can also then add more of them, which I'll demo in just a second. The other thing I wanted to call out here is that we're using this sort of fixed wedge target view. So you can see the blue is in the top left, kind of the 11 or 10 o'clock position. The 9 o'clock position are the session summaries. Down here, the gray nodes are your timeline, orange are the moments, and all those color codes can be found on the targets and sources table to the left there. That's controlled by fixed wedge. You could take that off and go freeform, sort of a more traditional physics ran view, but I'll keep that on for now. I think it's a little cleaner of a look. And then, yeah, you can add, whatever else you would like if you want to do an entity comparison. So in this case, let's do this character Braun, and this will just pull up all the connections that they share. It'll still order them in kind of that fixed x-axis way, where Eldrick is farther to the right because he has more tags than Braun does. But you can add a bunch more entities that are important for you and your story. One other fun one I like to call out as well is you can actually just size this for a little flavor. You can show the nodes as dies. This case is a D100. There's D20s and D1 through 6 as well, or the faces of the D6, 1 through 6. Let's go into a session specific. This is sort of a more traditional view you might expect to see maybe with some other tools. Again, this is ran by that same physics engine, but this is looking at just one session, our most recent one that we just had. It's showing all of the targets that we have. In this case, they're the PCs, as they're the PCs are the characters, as they are the blue coloring there. If I zoom out a little bit, I'm going to see some other elements that came through here. We just had a couple locations that popped in, and it looks like we didn't have any factions involved in the session, but if we did, they would be purple. I mean, you can play with this and really kind of drill down and look at what was actually happening, in this, or what was connected to what did they share. I'm just going to get rid of the die there just for visual simplicity. But it's sort of a fun way just to look through what was tagged to each of the characters in a given session or each of your entities. So this is the timeline deep dive view. By default, it will display sort of the timeline in a row pattern here. All these gray dots are the steps, the most granular level of your session. Green, brown, and red are minor, major, and session nodes specifically. Fun thing about this is that because we're pinning the chronology from left to right on that x-axis, you can see when characters were involved in your story. So you'll commonly see your PCs, in this case, say Eldrick, who's one of our PCs, is involved in a whole lot of that story because he's doing ideally fun and interesting things throughout. So he'll be generally oriented towards the middle, as well as your other PCs. But entities say they were only appearing, say, once or twice, maybe at the beginning, like Pepe was only once, you're going to see him on that left-hand side. So it's that little visual representation just to show you kind of who was involved or what was involved and when in the story. A fun way to go about doing it. Other ways, if this feels like a whole lot, like there's a lot of connections going on, all these electrons there, you can aggregate those tags and actually say, if you don't want to see step level, you can aggregate them up to, say, the minor beat level. So we're still going to display the steps, and actually you can filter them out if you want to with that Viz step button. I'm not going to do it in this case, but it shows a little less connections. And then you'll also see sort of shared connections for more entities. So of, say, let's deep dive on this one here, this minor beat was tracking the survivors. There's 5 different entities that were all involved in that exact same minor beat. And that's because the steps that are the children of that minor all tagged those characters. So again, it kind of creates that entity mapping of who was involved in similar things together. Now, there's a lot of data, a lot of nodes on the screen. It gets really unruly when you add a whole lot more sessions to it or even your full campaign. And because of that, I'm actually going to go back to tag aggregate. I'm going to show you just 2 other views we created. It's the same idea, but just in similar or slightly different ways to display it. So this is the semicircle view. I like adding this little helper image just to give you a sense of how it looks. But in essence, it starts on the left, same idea, arcs around to the right. And so you're going to again see your PCs. I often like to drag them in the middle because they're involved throughout, while entities that were, say, involved in the very beginning, like Pepe, like we mentioned, are going to be on the outside, or say, Kanoki was mentioned as a something at the end of the session. So a fun way to look through it as well. And again, you can aggregate those tags through just your whatever level you would like. You can see I left this here just for a moment. The electrons and sort of nodes got thrown out of whack a little bit. Like I said, we are in beta, but we do have this sort of reset button. Click on that floating action button. It resets the engine, replaces the nodes where you would expect them to be, and you can visualize your world that way. Again, this is the tags aggregated up to the minor beat level. Let's bring it back and sort of reset, and then we'll just show this clock view, which is a fun one as well. It's the same idea, but everything in this case starts at noon and ends at noon. So your session 1 is at 12 noon, and then it'll scroll all the way down to the right. Really kind of whatever works and fits for you. You can add a title if you would like. You can customize it. I won't do it here, but you can type in whatever you would like. And then your screen cap functionality, ability to reset your camera, and a whole lot more. So get in there, play with it. If you have questions, go ahead and ask. But hopefully you enjoy it and add some value to your campaign. Thanks so much.